Just finding a comfortable position. So if you are less than 34 weeks pregnant, then you can sit cross-legged if that's comfortable for you, or you can stick a cushion or block underneath your sitting bones so it feels a little bit more comfortable. If that's not comfortable for you, or you're more than 34 weeks pregnant, then bringing the soles of your feet together can be quite nice as an option. It's quite a nice stretch for the hips as well, or you can just stretch the legs out in front. So whatever works for you, whatever feels nice. And then just lean back into the wall. So where you've got the wall behind you, lean into it and let it support you. So you can relax your back. Just take a moment, just closing your eyes and just resting back into a quiet space. So just allowing this wave of stillness to wash over you. And then let your awareness rest on your body first of all, and just notice how your body feels today. So particularly if you've had a growth spurt, or your baby's had a growth spurt rather than you, quite often when your baby has a growth spurt, it can show up as lots of different aches and pains in your body. So you might be aware of a different range of experiences or a different range of sensations. And then once you've just made a note of your physical body, bring your awareness to your baby. And just notice what you're experiencing in the space where your baby resides. So you might have a feeling of fullness, you might have a little feeling of tugging, the belly feels a little tight. You might even have some movements if you're over 20 weeks. You might start to feel a few little flutterings and movements. So just being aware of all the sensations that you are receiving from your baby. And then draw your awareness to your breath. Be aware of the sensation of your breath as it moves in through your body. And then feeling the sensation of your breath as it moves away. And then see if you can make your breath a little bit longer. So can you invite your inhalation to lengthen? And then can you invite your exhalation to lengthen? And when we think about lengthening the breath, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to try to breathe in as much air as you possibly can. It's more a case of refining the control that you have over your breath. And one of the ways that we can do that is to very gently contract the muscles around the throat. So we call this the ocean breath because it has this sound like the waves of the ocean gently rolling in and out. It's the similar sensation that we make when we are sighing under our breath. Or maybe if we are cleaning our glasses or a mirror. But we do this with the mouth closed, and then you maintain that glottal contraction as you breathe in. So just continue for a few more rounds, just focusing on this more refined, controlled breath. Seeing if you can invite your breath to move into your rib cage, move into the sides of your ribs, the backs of your ribs. And then once you've finished, one more breath, you can just relax the ocean breath. And then gently open the eyes. Okay, so you're going to take your legs out wide, just stretching and warming. So just start by wriggling your toes. Notice how they feel today. So again, toes and feet can be prone to a bit of swelling during pregnancy. So notice if they are starting to feel a little bit swollen. And then push the toes away and then pull the toes back towards you. And the same again, push them away, pull back towards you. And again. And one more. And then rotate the ankles around. And then go the other way. So rotating the opposite direction. And then interlace your fingers, push the palms all the way up to the ceiling. And then breathe in here, but lift the rib cage up and away from your pelvis so that you're not lifting up your shoulders. Your shoulders are relaxed, but the ribs are lifting. And then on the out breath, just slide the back of your body, your shoulders and the backs of your hands along the wall to one side. And then as you breathe in, push the hips into the ground to rise back up. And as you exhale, just slide yourself along the wall to the other side. And to come up, push the hips into the ground. And then bring the hands all the way down. Can you get round to the side? And I think, Olwen, you might run out, and Claire, as you come into the middle. We haven't got a full wall here, have we? So then, what I'd like you to do is you're going to change the interlock on your finger. So now the other finger is at the front. So if you're not sure how to do that, just interlace your fingers. Notice which index finger is at the top, and then just swap them over the way. It's an odd feeling if you're not used to doing this. And then push the palms away. Inhale, lift the rib cage, so keep the shoulders relaxed. And then exhale, just easing over. See if you can slide the back of your body against the wall. Inhale, come back. And then exhale and slide the other way. And inhale, come back. And exhale. So you're going to need to just shuffle a little bit forwards now because we're going to do a bit of rotating and the wall might kind of stop you from getting round. So just ease yourself enough forwards. And just keeping the legs straight, so pushing the heels away. And then inhaling, take the arms up over the head. And as you breathe out, just ease yourself forwards. Let the hands rest wherever they come to. If your hamstrings are particularly tight and it's pulling on the back, bend up the knees because that will allow you to get into the back a little bit more. If the hamstrings are fine, you can probably do this with the legs flat on the ground. And then just start to weave your spine around one side and then the other. So quite a nice stretch for the upper back as well as the lower back and around the shoulders. And just ease yourself all the way up. Take the arms up over the head again as you breathe in. Now turn towards your right leg and then bring the hands down either side. Have a little bit of a weave here. So this gives you a bit of a stretch on the left side of your lower back now. So just easing around here, just noticing how that feels. back to the center, taking the arms all the way up again. Turn the belly to the left and then exhale. Bring the hands all the way down. Either side of the left leg, and then just a little bit of movement again. And slide the hands all the way up. Take the arms up. Now this time turn the belly round as far as you can go towards the right. Bring the right hand onto the floor behind you and just rest the left hand onto your right thigh. And just keep the crown of your head lengthening upwards as you gently rotate through the spine, through the shoulders and through the neck. Just making sure that everything feels loose, there's no tightness, you're not pulling or pushing the body into this twist. And then gently come back to the center. Float the arms all the way up again. Now this time as you exhale, turn the belly to the left and just drop the left hand to the floor behind you, right hand onto your thigh. And then just keep the crown of your head elevating upwards as you gently relax everything around towards the left. And then gently come all the way back to the center. And then just gather up the legs. Bring the soles of your feet together now. Let the knees drop out to the sides. So as you breathe in, let the knees lift up. And then you're going to use the vocalized ocean breath. To let the knees drop down. So ha breath, it's a much more dynamic and energizing form of that ocean breath. It's almost like you're silently roaring. So just take a couple more of these movements, just letting the knees rise up on the inhale and then using that ha breath, so whispering the ha sound as you exhale and going at your own pace, so you don't have to try to keep time with everybody else because all of your breathing is going to be slightly different. And then one more. And then just gathering the knees up, and then you're going to come over onto your hands and onto your knees. And we'll just have a little warm-up stretch here. So when you come onto your hands and your knees, make sure that your back is long, hands are underneath the shoulders, and the knees are underneath the hips. And then just curling your spine all the way up to the ceiling, tucking your tailbone underneath so that you can round the back comfortably. And then as you breathe in, lengthening the spine. So bringing the spine back to neutral and then draw the hips and the pelvis away from each other. Again on the out breath, tuck the tailbone under. Roll the spine to the ceiling, gather everything up towards the ceiling. And then on the in-breath, lengthening the spine. And just do that one more time. And then you're going to tuck your toes under. You're going to roll the spine to the ceiling. You're going to make space for your baby between your knees and take the buttocks all the way back to the heels with the toes tucked under, so you're slightly higher up. Stretch the arms out in front of you as far as they will go. So reach forwards with the arms. You should get a nice stretch through the side of the body. Now on the inhale, push the knees into the ground and rise up. Now, if you've got high blood pressure, you won't want to do the downward facing dog. Likewise, if you've got any carpal tunnel or shoulder or elbow issues, you won't want to. So you can just go back and do the same thing again. If you're good to go for a downward dog, then as you exhale, reach up and back. Then inhale, the knees come all the way back down to the ground. On the exhale, roll the spine to the ceiling, bring the hips all the way back to the heels. And you're just going to do that 2 more times. You're just working through your own breathing rhythm. You can engage your ocean breath, your ujjayi breathing. And then the next time you ease all the way back onto the heels, you can just rise all the way back up. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this idea of optimum fetal positioning. And what I want you to do is to, while I'm going to be endlessly talking about optimum fetal positioning, you're going to sit in a couple of the different positions that I recommend for you to adopt, because it's more or less it's the sitting that makes a difference. So when we're trying to help our baby get into the right position, if we're not sitting properly, that's the main issue. So the first position we're going to get into is a kneeling position. And what I want you to do is feel the difference in terms of the space that your baby has between kneeling and potentially sitting cross-legged. So just notice, how does that feel when you're sitting cross-legged? What does the space feel like for your baby? And then come into a kneeling position. Now, because kneeling isn't particularly good in pregnancy for some time, particularly if you've got varicose veins, what I would recommend is taking a block or a cushion and putting that under the buttocks. If you've got a cushion, kind of fold it in half so you don't have quite so much pressure in the calf muscles. And obviously the higher the gap, so the higher the lift that you're sitting on, the more height you gain with your hips, which means the less pressure you have in your calf muscles. If it's just not comfortable, where is it getting you?
It's just my legs, my right leg is so swollen and my veins, it's just really...
Yeah, no, don't do it then. Yeah. You put your leg, actually what you could do is legs up over the chair. Yeah, so what you could do, did you know I have a chair? I've got myself a chair. Where's my chair?
I think this was yours. Might have been yours.
Well, no, that's yours.
Oh.
So legs up the chair. There's a couple of things you can do. So particularly when there's a lot of swelling, and you kind of have to shuffle in sideways. You've got to get your bum as far under the chair as you can. And you can either come into this position, but if you want to elevate the legs properly, then you're kind of, oh, these chairs are too, yeah, they're kind of too.
Depends how long your legs are. I've definitely got little legs.
Because with a chair that's not quite as long as this, you can actually rest against the back of the chair, but that's not really doing much.
Little legs on. I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if backwards would work.
Maybe not that. Or blimey, I'm not sure I'm going
But you do have to you have to hold the chair, otherwise you'll just kind of push it over.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a joy.
You want to enjoy sitting on it?
Do you want me to push the chair forwards?
Yeah.
Will your hamstrings handle it?
Probably not.
Now, can you hold the legs?
There we go.
How's that?
Yeah, lovely.
If and when it gets uncomfortable, come down. Are you okay so far?
No, it's what I feel like I need to do, but it's
yeah, it's pretty good. What you can do, like points and flexors, like just get everything pumping, so it all kind of drains the other way. Okay, yeah. So legs up. You know, we often hear this, don't we, a lot about in pregnancy, and you know, the legs are very prone to swelling. So it is useful to do that. Okay, we're kneeling, aren't we? So Optimum fetal positioning. What is it? It's the term that is used to describe the position of the baby in the pelvis during the last few weeks of pregnancy, and it's actually this that will determine how your labour will progress, particularly the delivery stage, or one of them. It's generally understood that a head down position is the way to go. So we kind of understand that. We don't want breech babies, bottom first, because they're a little trickier to birth. Not impossible to birth, but a little bit trickier. So we always want the head to be in this downwards position. But it's also to do with the position of the baby's spine as well. So it's not just about being head down, because actually that's a head down position, but that is really not a favourable. I'm just going to take the placenta off. You can't do this with the baby. But I'm just going to do it so that you can see a bit easier. Yeah, so this position here, where the baby's head is basically facing out, and then the spine is rubbing against the mother's spine. So this is a really unfavourable position for birth, and unfortunately it's never really picked up that the baby's back to back, because the medical profession don't really know how to fix it. They don't understand body mechanics, which is why they never teach you anything in the medical profession about how you can get your baby in the right position and how you can shift your baby's position when you're in labour. So they don't pay any attention to it, but this is called back-to-back labour or posterior labour, and it is excruciating. These are the labours that last like 4 days, and mum finds it really, really difficult, and then has to have a C-section because she's exhausted. Because it's so painful, the spine's rubbing against each other. We know that it's painful for the mother because she experiences it. It must be just as bad for the baby as well. But also the head doesn't fit properly in the pelvic cavity. So women's pelvises are wider hip to hip. This one's not so great. It doesn't really show it here, it shows you around one. But generally speaking, women's pelvises are wider from hip to hip than male pelvises, and that is because we have to, in most cases, we have to get a baby through them. Or we might want to get a baby through them. So
at what point do they find that it's that way around then?
they don't even check.
They don't know.
They're not interested because it
So
makes no
until the head
odds.
starts coming out, then they go,
Yeah,
oh, it's
makes
not that way.
absolute. Well, some clever midwives may know them. They can often. There's a couple of ways they can tell. Firstly, if they can see that this labour is very long and very uncomfortable, they can often recognise it. But you need a skilled midwife who knows how to do this. And in a lot of cases, you just get midwives who just rely on the technology, like the epidurals and etc., and gas and air, and they don't really understand the mechanics of it. So it's potluck really who you get. Very skilled midwives can actually tell the position of the baby's head when they do the cervical dilation check. And I know I've talked about vaginal examinations. Are they good? Are they bad? That's up to you to make that decision. However, I would say the only use of a vaginal examination is to check the position of the baby, because what they'll feel for is the fontanelle, and they can tell by palpating the baby's head where the head is by the shape of the fontanelle. I've got my bag here so you can see. Yes, we got past this round before. Do you remember seeing this? The cervical dilation handbook. What's it called? A pocket guide to vaginal examination. So when we pass this round before, I'll pass it round again. But this is quite good because it's got the fontanelle recess, so you can actually kind of feel, and this is more or less what the midwives will feel. I'll just chuck that around and have a play. So when they're doing the dilation check, that's what they can feel, if they know what they're looking for. So they're really the only ways that it can be, like I say, diagnosed. We don't really diagnose it because generally the medical profession don't deal with it. However, it is possible to change the position of your baby while you're birthing. So it's quite useful. If you think you're having a really long labour and it's really painful, and it's a tricky one because you don't know what to measure it against if you haven't had a baby before. How do you know if it's a long labour? How do you know if it's a painful labour? You just haven't got anything to measure it against, have you? But generally speaking, you know, most of our labours here, you know, once you get into active labour, it's about 5 hours, all being well, everything's moving in the right direction, no more really than 5 hours, and that's what we average here. So if you've been like 14 hours and not much is happening and your cervix isn't dilating, then it could be because your baby is back to back. That could be a possibility. Yeah, so we want the baby to sit comfortably into the pelvis in the position that best fits the shape of the baby's head. So baby's head, a human head, is longest from forehead to back of the head. This bit, we're kind of like, you know, we haven't got round heads, and the pelvis is long hip to hip. So it kind of makes sense. The baby's head will go in sideways, and that's the best fit. You can see that. Oh, easy in, easy out. That way, not so great. And then they slightly turn to the side as well. So this is what they would call an OLA, occipito, lateral anterior, OLA, and this is the favourable position. They tend to go to the left. Now if they go to the right, it doesn't matter, the left or the right. They tend to favour the left because the liver's here, and it's quite a big organ, and so most babies tend to kind of occupy the space on the other side just because it's a bit easier. But if they're on the right side, it's equally fine, so long as, you know, they're in that position, that kind of sideways on position. It also allows the baby to flex their head and tuck their chin in as well, and this is something that we need to consider as well. So if a baby is bearing down or being pushed through a birth canal with the chin tucked in, they've got a little bit more, you know, it's easier, isn't it? If they're in the back-to-back position, they're like this, the chin is extended, so again it's a lot more difficult to press down on the cervix. The baby's head presses on your cervix during the initial stages of cervical dilation, and then the crown of the head pushes through the pelvis as you're delivering. In the back-to-back position, it's just not the same. They don't have the same kind of purchase. And they're coming through in all kinds of wrong ways, and this is what they can sometimes get stuck as well. You know, you hear about babies getting stuck. Well, they've got their faces kind of pressing against all the bony landscape of the pubic bone, pubic symphysis, whereas when they're side on, their head is tucked in towards themselves. So again, they're not going to get, because they've got really big ears. They're not going to get bits of them stuck. In this position, if they're in the left occipito anterior position, you'll feel kicking under the right ribs. Now this is kind of, we're talking about sort of 37, 38 weeks plus here. Anything before that, and they're probably still moving around quite a lot. Then having said that, you know, some babies get into a nice head down position at 28 weeks and then they don't move. They're the good babies. So if you're towards the later stage of your pregnancy and you're getting kicking under your right rib, that's a good sign that they're the left side. If you're getting under the left rib, it probably means they're head down on the right. Are you getting any?
I'm getting kicked, but it varies day to day.
They're doing the splits then.
It's like. But yeah, I think I'm seeing a midwife tomorrow, but last time she said the head was there, but said it's like all over the place here.
Yeah, because if there's still quite a bit of space in there,
Yeah.
they can be just.
Like,
Are you feeling like big washing machine movements?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time, yeah. So that your baby's moving around.
Yeah.
That's what those kind of weird feelings are.
Yeah.
You've got a very active baby.
Yeah. Particularly at night when I'm trying to sleep.
Perfect time. Jumping on your bladder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what sounds like. That's what's happening then. Your baby's just kind of shifting around
That's
from
what I
side
imagine
to
is
side.
happening.
Yeah, swiveling. If the baby fails to move into an optimum position, It may be that they are in the breech, transverse or posterior positions. So breech is when the bum comes first, and these are the main things that we want to avoid. So we do a lot of stuff about not getting babies into breech positions, because if you're showing as a breech, you'll probably have a C-section. And then also transverse. So this is another presentation where the baby sits in the pelvis like a hammock, like that. And this is a really bad position. So in fact, this is worse. This is actually the really dangerous one, because the leg falls up. Because with a breech baby, it more than likely would come out. You can birth breech babies. It's not impossible. It's just a bit more difficult. The transverse baby is not coming out, because then there's no part of their body that's kind of coming out through the exit, through the birth canal. And so this is the dangerous position, that before the advent of scans and C-sections, that would have been a very bad outcome. So this, we want to avoid the transverse as well. So in early pregnancy, you often find babies kind of getting into transverse positions. And you can tell that because you feel quite wide, and you get kicking in the waist, and you feel like you're quite broad that way. But it's these big washing machine feelings that Melissa's been experiencing that actually you kind of want towards the end, because they're the big movements where they're trying to get themselves into the right position. Right, we're going to change positions now into the second of our optimum fetal positions. Now, we ideally would have had our balls, but we haven't got our balls, which is fine. So you're going to use your chair like a birthing ball. And this is something that I always recommend that mums towards the end of their pregnancies do all the time. So particularly around from about 30 weeks onwards, spend endless hours leaning over your ball, and most women just fall in love with their balls once they've had them, once they've got them, because they're so comfortable. So you imagine this is a ball. Now what you can do to make it more comfortable is to put your cushion on there, just to give yourself a little bit of padding, and you're just going to lean on it. That's all you're going to do. You can rest your head if you want to, if your arms are tired. And you might find that you start to just move anywhere. You might naturally find that you're swaying your hips or circling your hips. So this is our second important optimum fetal position. Optimum fetal position. And we spend a lot of time in this class on all fours. Most of you will know, having been here either before or having been here for the time that you've been here. We do a lot of this, and because it's one of the best positions to be in. Because now, can you feel how much space your baby's got now? And that's what we're aiming to do. Optimum fetal position is basically give your baby enough space to be able to get into the most favourable position that they can find. And that will be the optimum position, because it's the best fit. It's the one where the head is sideways. So, just staying there. So actually I've answered a lot of this, Jen, because you asked about the OP, having the cervical dilation check. Yeah, we've done all of this. When should you start to think about optimum fetal positioning? And as I said, I've put in here about 34 weeks in the first pregnancy. Your baby begins to run out of space inside the womb. In subsequent pregnancies, there's a little bit more space. So they probably can be at least 38 weeks before they can still turn to get into the head down position, because the womb is a bit stretchier, the body is a bit stretchier, the abs are a bit stretchier. It's all a bit stretchier in subsequent pregnancies. As an active participant in the labour process, each baby understands the need to now rotate and turn into the most favourable position for labour. And a lot of that is actually to do with the fact that any other position than getting their head into that perfect slot will feel really uncomfortable. And they talk about this in terms of the engagement. As you get towards the end of your pregnancy, you get told, or your baby's 4/5, 3/5, all these different engagements, and that is your baby's head just getting deeper, deeper and deeper into the pelvis. And having the head in this position is basically gives your baby more space, because they're also running out of space. At some point, as your baby grows, they're going to get right up against your diaphragm. And so if they haven't got their head engaged in the pelvis for whatever reason, then it's just going to be uncomfortable for them. They're going to feel really pressured. They can't stretch their limbs out, and they're going to feel really uncomfortable. So more often than not, they'll start to burrow down to find the place where they'll go, that's better. I can do what what's happening possibly in Melissa's case, the baby's doing splits. So just finding a bit more space. So, you know, they'll, if they're given the opportunity, your baby will find their way into the optimum position because it's the one that they have more space in. Okay. So how can we encourage our baby? And it's all about angles. So the angle between the maternal spine and the pelvic rim, the pubic rim, dictates the amount of space that is available for your baby. Now, this isn't a very mobile pelvis. You can't really see it on the pelvis, but you can certainly experience it, and it's the difference between the tuck and the tilt. So in your position here, if you tuck your tailbone under and you round your back in this position, that is the smallest amount of angle that you can give your baby. Okay, and then if you go the other way, if you kind of tilt, your baby's got a lot more space. Now in this position, it probably doesn't mean very much to be in this kind of tucked under position. However, how do we sit most of the day? When you translate that position, you can see straight away, can't you? I'm now in that rounded back, tucked under position, and I might sit here for 10 hours. And if you sit in this position all the live long day, and that includes either driving to work, or sitting on a train, and then sitting at a desk, and then coming home in your car or on the train, eating your dinner, and then sitting on the sofa and doing it even worse, because sofas, you can't even get your feet on the floor. You can do 10, 12 hours in a slumped position where all the time your baby has no access to the deeper parts of your pelvis because you're tucked under all the time. And this is the main thing. So you can, you know, feel the difference. And then just be really mindful of what's happening and how you're sitting. Yeah, so everything puts us into this position, that kind of tucked under, rounded back position. Our mothers and our grandmothers would have spent time scrubbing the floors, walking, and generally being more active, which would allow their babies the space needed to enter the pelvis optimally. You know, we don't do those things. We don't scrub the floors. We're not on all fours unless you've got a baby already, in which case you're on all fours all the time, depending on how old they are. So, you know, our lifestyle makes a bit of a difference. So let's have a look at a third position. And this is one you can do at home, and you can possibly do it at work as well if your chair is amenable. These are not so great. We've talked about this before, the fact that they are quite wide and they've got a metal rim. So we won't sit here for too long. But when you sit back to front on a chair, it completely changes the angle in the pelvis. Can you feel the difference? Now you're in that tilt position and you can't tuck. You cannot. Try and tuck. It's not easy. But this position is a really, really good one to sit in, you know, after about 30 weeks if you want to work on your optimum fetal position. Obviously when you're driving you can't sit back to front, but definitely at work, if you've got a chair that will swivel you round the other way, even the little baby chairs in the classrooms, you might be able to swivel them round the other way.
So copying me.
Yeah.
My little 6-year-olds. Why are you sitting like that for? Because I'm British.
Yeah. and then you're going to tell them it's all
necessary.
about optimum fetal position.
No, I do that part.
And it feels more comfortable. It feels nicer on the back as well, because every time you sit the other way round, where you are kind of in that slumping position, one of the things that happens is your back rounds, and then you end up with pain in your neck, pain in your shoulders, you can't breathe properly, and everything goes wrong. Whereas when you're in the opposite position, can you feel how you can breathe better? The rib cage can lift, body opens. So altogether, this is a really useful position to sit in if you've got a chair that will put you into it.
I've been putting one of those really big V-shaped pillows that you can use like to sit up, in bed to read or whatever. I've been putting that on the sofa, but round my back, and it props me up, so I'm sitting more upright on the sofa. So that's sort of like the first stage before I then get on the ball. If I don't want to be on my ball all night, but I want to sit up straight.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think, and after a while, your body just starts asking for these things, doesn't it? Because you just don't feel comfortable anymore. I think it's even more noticeable when you're pregnant. If you're not aligned properly, you can feel it a lot easier. Okay, so in a forward-leaning position, the weight of a near-term baby will also encourage the spine to move towards the maternal navel. So when we're forwards, like if we're leaning on all fours over the ball, one of the things that can happen is if you've got a back-to-back baby and you're on all fours, because the spine is heavier than the belly, the theory is that gravity might kind of bring the spine around. It's a theory, because we can't see what happens inside babies, inside wombs, but there is a theory. But generally moving the body, moving your hips, moving your body, will give your baby the space to make these big shifts as and when they need to. If you slump backwards, and your pelvis tilts backwards, the weight of your baby's spine will rotate towards pelvis, towards the spine. So you'll be, you're kind of exacerbating this position and not allowing your baby, again, that opportunity to move. If you adopt this position during labour, you're likely to have a back-to-back labour. So bear this in mind. When you see images of women giving birth, lying on their backs, that is kind of exacerbating again. If you've got a back-to-back labour that you're not aware of, and then you lie on your back for, the however many hours it's going to take you to get this back-to-back baby out, then there's nothing that can really change. Whereas if you have a back-to-back baby going into labour, but you're on all fours and you're moving, you're doing lunging and hip circling, then it's a lot easier for the baby to change that position. So this is what the term active labour means. It means moving, and it's really useful. If you just adopt one position, just lie on your back during labour, nothing can change. And it may be that you've got a perfectly positioned baby just by luck, and you have a nice quick labour. And you can do, I'm not saying you can't have a quick pain-free labour, well, not say pain-free, comfortable labour on your back. I'm not saying you can't. But if something isn't quite sitting right, then lying on your back isn't going to offer you any change to that scenario. So, from 34 weeks onwards, or maybe even less, spend 10 minutes every day on all fours, or over your ball, or over a chair. And walk and swim frequently. So walking, hips are moving from side to side, and also swimming, there's a lot of hip changing, a lot of things happening in the hips. Sit or lean over a birthing ball or a beanbag. Think about your posture and the angle of your pelvis. So now you've got that information. Every time you slump, now hopefully that little beep is going to go off, and you're going to, I've got to get my body in the right position. The other thing is looking at sitting with the knees higher or lower than the hips. So this is the benchmark. When you sit, so if you want to sit back onto your chairs, so if your knees are higher than your hips or kind of level with them, it tucks you under. Can you feel that? If you're quite tall on these chairs, you're okay. If you're not, and you need to put the feet on the floor, there's a bit of tucking under that has to happen. And that means that in some cases the knees are going to be higher than the hips. And particularly, if you are sitting in primary school chairs, that angle, you're going to be put into that. So basically you don't want the knees up here, because the higher the knees are, the more you're going to end up kind of tucking under. As opposed to when you sit this way, can you see the knees are a lot lower than the hips? So this is the kind of angle that you're looking at as well. It's something that I measure when you come in with your balls. When we do a session on birthing balls, which we do every now and again. And one of the things I do as soon as everyone sits on their ball is I start looking at this, because some balls are not blown up enough, or they're not the right size for the height of the mom. And if your knees are higher than your hips on your birthing ball, then even sitting on your birthing ball is going to do more harm than good. So it's this, you need to be looking at this. And this is why when you sit on the sofa, you go home tonight and you sit on the sofa and you look where you're, where's your spine, where's your hips, where are your knees, and so start kind of tracking all of this and seeing what's happening. What else not to do? Lie on your side on the sofa instead, so don't sit on it, but lie on your side. Don't try and keep on the left side at night in bed. So I know that I've read a lot of this nonsense about, you must only lie on your left side at night. Yeah, you've got no control over it. Don't stress about it, nothing you can do. If you lie on your back for too long, you'll wake up. And this is what I always say, mums come to class and they say, I'm so upset, I woke up on my back. And I say, good, you woke up. That's safety mechanism working fine. So yeah, don't worry about it. You'll shift and change your position so many times when you're asleep. Have you ever seen those time-lapse pictures of people in bed? And this is what you're going to be doing. And if you do lie on your back for too long, your body is going to feel uncomfortable because your blood pressure will drop, your baby might start to kick you, and so you'll get woken up anyway.
I've been woken up loads recently on my back, and you were saying about just if we're forced to go to sleep on the left as well, I think that would annoy me, because I get hip pains, and I want to try the other side for a bit as well. But yeah, it's annoying me but thankfully I am waking up, so that's the good thing.
That's the thing. And so I always say, if you do wake up on your back, think of it as a good thing. What else? Sit backwards over a chair, which I've just been doing. Yeah, avoid sitting on the sofa, avoid sitting for long periods of time, avoid long car journeys. Because again, most cars are built for men, and again, you get into a horrible slumping position in most cars. So check your seated posture in your car, knee to hip, what's happening. Can you sit on a cushion to change that knee to hip ratio, particularly if you are having to do long journeys. Crossing your legs, it impedes the venous return, which is why I always say don't cross your legs in the class if you are more than 34 weeks pregnant. And deep unsupported squats, you don't want to do them for a long time, because that's definitely knees higher than your hips. We want to practice them, so that's this. We do want to practice these because this is actually the best position for delivery, squatting in this position. But you wouldn't want to sit there for too long. So we'll spend a couple of minutes, if that, in the class, doing all these kind of different ranges of movements. But we're not going to be in there for too long. So we've had a look at some of the different positions. And then the only thing I just wanted to mention is when is a malpresentation unavoidable. So this is what they call, if the baby's not in the right position, they call it a malpresentation. And there are some instances where actually there's not much you can do about your baby being not in the perfect position or the optimum position. Some of it is the shape of the maternal pelvis. Some pelvises just will not accommodate a head down baby. You know, and I've had mums come, I had one mum came to my class, she came with both of her babies and we did everything possible and she had 2 breech babies. And we just, you know, had to suggest and make the assumption that, you know, her pelvis just wasn't gonna do it. Both of her babies would breech and we did everything, we did absolutely everything. Where the placenta is attached as well, so this is more about back-to-back positions. I'm going to put the placenta back on. So when we talk about back-to-back positioning, sometimes your baby will face in towards the placenta. So, you know, wherever your placenta is attached on your uterine wall, your baby will often kind of fetal curl into it. So if your placenta is attached anteriorly, which means to the front here, the front part of your uterine lining, then your baby might curl towards it and end up being in the back-to-back position, the posterior position. And you know, placentas don't move once they've embedded into the uterine wall, so that's potentially could be a reason why there's no changing. The other thing is tight abs. You know, if you had, prior to becoming pregnant, rock solid abs, and it's always funny because a lot of mums just go, oh God, I wish. But then you do get mums, you know, who have worked really hard at getting their core really strong. They might be an athlete, and there might be lots of reasons for it. And they often, if the baby doesn't get head down quite early on, because they run out of space a lot more quickly, and then because the abs don't stretch as much as sort of nominally toned abs, then you know the baby's just held in place then. So you know, if you know that you have a really good solid core, then work at getting your baby head down a lot sooner. So maybe looking from like 20-26 weeks onwards, because they're going to run out of space a lot more quickly, with the abs having less give. And then again, some perfectly presented babies can turn into the OP position during labour, because every time the uterus contracts, it's like being in a washing machine for your baby. And so sometimes they can spin round, which is why I always recommend doing the kind of particular array of movements during labour, which we'll have a look at now. So that is all I'm going to say. You've got your handouts. So let's have a look at putting some of this into practice. So if you want to put your chair at the end of your mat, and it's quite a good idea actually to place 2 of the legs, at least the front 2 legs, on the mat so that it doesn't slip away, so that it's got a bit of grip, otherwise it'll probably just slide away along the carpet. So imagining this is your ball, your birthing ball, and then one of the best ways during labour to help your baby to not be in an OP position is to do the lunge moves, because it really changes the angle of your pelvis. So you're just going to take 1 foot forward, doesn't matter which one, and you can start by just lunging forwards and backwards. And then we'll introduce one of the birthing breaths. So we'll use the calming straw breath. So this is just inhaling through your nose and then blowing the breath out between your lips as if you have a tiny straw in your mouth, or as if you're whistling silently. This is very calming, it's very soothing. Notice how your movements slow down when you integrate the breath work. It's absolutely magical, isn't it? That just that attention to the breath changes everything. So then we can come into a circular movement here. So you're going to circle your hips around. And can you feel the space now in your pelvis? So if your baby has got themselves a little trapped in a back-to-back position, then this circling of the hips around will certainly ease them out of this. And you can go the other way, so now you can circle in the opposite direction. Still utilising your straw breath. And you can also do this prior to labour as well. So this is a good one to do with breech babies. So mums who have breech babies prior to labour, we do this a lot because again it gives the baby a lot of space. And then you can just come back. So we're going to have a little intermediary stretch before we do the other leg. So if you want to come up and you're going to hold the back of your chair, you're going to walk your feet backwards until your spine is parallel to the floor. And what I would recommend is bending the knees, because that means your pelvis won't get tucked under. So bend the knees and then slightly tilt your pelvis so that your sitting bones are pointing back towards the wall behind you. And then without pulling the chair over, consciously stretch the sitting bones towards the chair, towards the wall behind you. So this creates a sense of traction through the whole of your spine. So it's a really nice way to stretch out, not just your hamstrings, but all the muscles along the whole of your back, your ribs, your shoulders, and even up into your armpits as well. And then you can bend the knees, walk feet all the way in, and then have a bit of a jiggle. And then you're going to come back down, and then you're going to swap the legs over. So you're going to change legs, do the other side, and then just start with this gentle lunging forwards and backwards. Find the straw breath again, so that blowing gently through the lips on the exhale. You can also do the straw breath on the inhale. It's quite a cooling form of breath. So it's useful if you're feeling a little hot, if you're overheating during your labour. And then you can circle the hips around. And circle in the opposite direction. And then you can bring that knee to the floor, coming and standing up again, and then for a second time coming into this back stretch. So walk the feet backwards, soften the knees, and then just lengthen the sitting bones away from the chair. And to get a deeper stretch, particularly in the lower back, you can very gently lengthen one hip a little bit more towards the wall, and then the other one, as if you're just making a little tiny sway, horizontal sway with the hips, and that can get you a little bit deeper into the lower back. bend the knees, walk in towards the chair. And we'll just pop the chair to the side of it. I'm going to need to move this back just a touch because just about a little bit more. Okay, so from your standing position, there's a couple of other things that we can do as well to create some optimum fetal positioning. The kind of belly dancer circles, so just moving the hips around. And the best way to move the hips is to bend the knees as much as you can, so you can actually feel the pelvis changing position. So if you have your fingers on your hip bones, you can feel this little movement around. And then change direction, go the other way. So again, these movements are useful pre-labour to help with optimum fetal positioning, and they're also useful during labour as well. And then coming back to stillness. So another movement, this is quite similar to lunging but in a standing position. It's just like lifting one knee up, lowering it down, and then lifting the other knee up and then down. So you kind of want quite a wide move. It's very elegant.
Your hips supposed to crunch.
They probably will.
This is normal.
And then just coming back, having a little bit of a jiggle. And then standing at the front of your mat and just stepping back with your right leg. Have the hips facing forwards, bend the left knee and sink down, and then take the arms up over the head. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach up through one side, we're going to reach up through the other side. So this is a slightly different way of making space for your baby. So now we're creating the length through the body. So the pelvis is nice and open because we've got this lunge position, but we're reaching up to one side, reaching up to the other side, and generating space by lifting the rib cage. You should feel the rib cage lifting up away from your baby, so you've got a little bit more space. And then relax, step that foot forwards, have a jiggle, and then step left leg back, heel to the floor, right knee bends, and then same thing again, take the arms up, keep rooting down through both feet, and then reaching up. And relaxing. Coming all the way back to the centre, having a little bit of a jiggle, and then there was one more. It was it's using the belly dancers with the arms. So adding those two things together, so moving the hips and also having the reach. So you can take hold of the opposite elbows, or you can hold your hands, push the palms up, so whatever feels best for you. Come down into a nice deep open leg position, and then just lifting one hip, lifting the other hip. So again, you can feel that length through the body. And finding that ujjayi breath, the ocean breath with muscles contracted around the throat. And then Release the arms. Just interlace the fingers behind your back for a moment. And see if you can straighten the arms. See if you can lift the arms. So a good stretch for the front of the body. And then release. And then coming back to holding the elbows, softening the knees, and now moving the upper body. So just circling the upper body around. So this has the added advantage of working on things like heartburn, working on breathlessness. And go the other way. And then release, step the feet back to the centre, and a little bit of a jiggle. And then just ease yourself down, so just coming all the way back down onto your hands and onto your knees, and then just gently extending the legs out in front. Okay, so we're going to come down and relax into lying down position, and we'll do a little bit of stretching, sort of twisting for the spine before we come fully down. So if you want to put anything warmer on, if you need socks on or something a little bit cozier, then please do. I'll probably put one of the lights off, but if I turn them all off, it's going to be very dark in here. And then you're just going to curl down, support yourself through the arms, and ease yourself all the way down. And then you might want to bring the knees up into the chest. Have your knees either side of your baby, and then maybe rock the knees from side to side, maybe push the knees forwards and backwards, or maybe circle the knees around. So this gives a really nice massage to the back of your pelvis, which is one of those areas that can often be quite congested during pregnancy. So it's often nice just to put some pressure, some weight through this SI joint, sacroiliac joint at the back of the pelvis. And then just dropping the feet down to the ground, take your arms out to the sides. The next time you breathe out, just gently drop both knees over towards the right side. Just get a little twist into your back and into your hip. And then as you breathe in, come back to the centre. As you breathe out, take the knees over to the left side. And as you breathe in, come back to the centre. We'll just do that again. So you might find that after a few repetitions, the back starts to feel a little bit looser, a little bit more open. Keep the breath nice and slow, nice and steady, using your ocean breath. And then the next time you finish your round, bring the knees back to the centre, feet are still on the floor. Take your arms back behind you this time, so now you're stretching into the upper part of the body. Have your wrists wider than your elbows, so that you can really get all of the arms flat on the floor. Some of you might be too close to the wall, so just take the arms a little bit wider. And then walk your feet as wide as your mat. If you've got long legs, you might need to even go beyond the mat. From that position, just drop both knees over to the right side. So now you've got a hip twist. So you might feel a strong stretch in one hip or possibly in both hips. And then as you inhale, bring the knees back to the centre. And as you breathe out, take the knees to the left. So both knees go to the left, but one will be inside the other leg. So it's a wide posture. So again, working on the quads. You might find the pull on the quad. You might find it on the internal movement. You might find it on the external movement. And then just doing the same thing again, inhaling back to the centre. Exhaling, both knees go over to the right, noticing how that feels, noticing where you feel it. And inhaling, knees back to the centre. And then last time, knees coming all the way over to the left. And if you want to lie on the left side for the last couple of minutes, you can just gather the knees and the arms, come over onto your left side, and then potentially just placing your blanket over you if you want to, or placing your block under your head, so whatever you are using. You might want to put cushion between the knees if you're feeling uncomfortable around the legs. If you're feeling uncomfortable around the hips. And then just allowing yourself to completely relax into your position. So just a few minutes of relaxation this evening, as we've had a fairly static session. So just taking this time to relax your body completely. Just feeling into the support of the ground beneath you. This feeling of the earth rising up to meet your body. Notice if there's any part of your body that feels tight, and it's quite commonly the hips, the spine, and the shoulders. And if there is some tightness there, can you consciously let it go? Can you invite your shoulders to fully relax? Can you invite your back to fully relax? Can you invite your hips to fully relax? And just being mindful of your breath. Noticing the rising and falling of your breath, that feeling of expansion as you breathe in, and then the feeling of letting go as you breathe out. And then from here, coming towards the end of this very short relaxation, just start to externalize your awareness. Be aware of all the experiences and feelings in your body, all the sensations where your body touches the floor. Be aware of all the sounds that you can hear. And start to slowly awaken your body, awaken your mind. You might want to move your toes and your fingers. You might want to stretch your body a little bit. And just easing yourself. And when you're ready, just gently bring yourself all the way up. And this way you're sitting. And just notice how you feel. So we haven't done a lot of physical movement today. So just noticing if your body has missed anything. Is there something that you might need to do later to ease out a little bit more? But also noticing how you feel mentally, having done this very important work, I think, of understanding how the female body works, how we get babies into the right position. So hopefully you've gained some very useful insights and wisdom today. We're just taking the arms all the way up, have a stretch, reach up to the sides. And just bringing the hands all the way down and just resting your hands against your baby, connecting in. And we'll close by chanting the sound Om. And if you wish to join in, you can take a breath and just let that sound resonate into your baby. Thank you so much for being here this evening, Yogini Mamas. Have a wonderful week.